You have a warrant. You're under arrest. Put your hand behind your back. Hand behind your back. Hey, back up. Stay over there.
He doesn't have a warrant.
Stop clenching, man.
He doesn't have a warrant. No, he doesn't. Who do you think he is? Wait,
Hold your name.
no, bro.
You got anything on him?
He doesn't have a warrant, bro.
Relax. Stop telling us that. Yes, he does. Get fast.
She bailed her beloved son out of jail. She paid the money herself. She brought him home. Then what did she repay her with? He shot her. 10 people were shot in a single day in Joliet, Illinois. 7 of them shared the same last name, and the woman who tried hardest to keep the gunman out of prison, the woman who stood between him and the law, who posted his bail and brought him home, was the very first person he killed. Her name was Tamika Nance. She was 47 years old. The man who shot her was her son. The Joliet police chief had been on the job for nearly 3 decades. He had seen crimes. He had seen violence. He had seen what people do to each other. But when he walked into those 2 houses on West Acres Road, he said this: "I've been a policeman 29 years. This is probably the worst crime scene I've ever been associated with." That is not a man speaking in exaggeration. That is a man who has seen everything, telling you he had never seen anything like this. This is not a story about a stranger who wandered into the wrong neighborhood. This is not a story about a random act of violence that nobody saw coming. This is a story about a family, a tight-knit family, according to everyone who knew them, living in 2 houses side by side on West Acres Road in Joliet, Illinois. It is a story about a mother who loved her son so fiercely that she refused to let him face consequences. A mother who, just 1 year before this massacre, stepped in front of law enforcement, argued on his behalf, and made sure he walked free. She brought him back to those houses on West Acres, back to the family, back home. And on January 21st, 2024, Romeo Nance picked up a handgun and an assault rifle, and he used both of them. As one neighbor later said of Tamika, she loved him more than she feared what he was capable of. Before we continue this case, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Subscribe if you're new here. We cover cases like this every week. Stay with me. This one matters. To understand what happened on West Acres Road, you have to understand who lived there. The Nance and Esters families shared 2 houses on the same block, 2212 and 2225 West Acres Road, side by side. According to people who knew them, they were not 2 separate households. They functioned as one. Tamika Nance was 47 years old. She was a registered nurse. She went to work. She came home. She took care of her family. By every account, she was the center of that household, the person who held everything together. She had multiple children, 3 daughters still living at home, a son who was bedridden and needed daily care, and Romeo, her oldest, who had been in and out of trouble for years. Next door lived her sister's family. Christine Esters was 38 years old. She was a corrections officer at the Joliet Treatment Center. She knew what violence looked like. She worked around it every day. Her husband, William Esters II, was 35. They lived and celebrated with the Nances. According to a surviving relative, this house on West Acres Road was where the family came together for Christmas every year. It was one of their favorite traditions. Kara Esters, one of the last surviving relatives, described her family this way. They would wake up in the middle of the night to help friends or family. They would give their last to help others, but they might laugh at you about the situation a little bit. That was who they were, the kind of people who showed up, the kind of people who gave what they had, the kind of people who found humor even in hard moments. Inside the Nance house, the children ranged in age from teenager to adult. Alexandria Nance was 20, Alana Nance was 16, Angel Nance was 14, and Joshua Nance, Romeo's brother, was 31, bedridden, dependent on the family around him. Then there was Romeo. Romeo Nance was 23 years old. He was tall, 6 feet 2 inches, 160 pounds. He had been in the criminal justice system since 2018 when he was arrested for armed robbery. He was not a stranger to violence. He was not someone who had one bad day and made one bad choice. His record stretched back years. In 2023, he was arrested again, this time for aggravated discharge of a firearm. He had pulled up next to a woman driving a Buick Enclave and fired a weapon at her. His bond was set at $100,000. That meant someone had to pay $10,000 cash to bring him home. Tamika paid it. She scraped it together with the help of Romeo's girlfriend, and she brought him back to West Acres Road. Court records confirmed that at the time of the massacre, Romeo Nance was out on bond for that 2023 shooting case and was still awaiting trial. He was living at home, he was armed, and the case against him had not yet been resolved. One small detail worth noting: Romeo had a girlfriend. Her name was Kylie Cleveland Singleton. She was 21 years old. They had a child together, a 3-year-old. She was part of his life in the weeks and months leading up to January 21st. Remember her name. It will matter later. The first sign that something had gone wrong did not come from inside those two houses on West Acres Road. It came from the street. At 4:15 in the afternoon on Sunday, January 21st, 2024, a 42-year-old man was outside on Davis Street in Joliet. He was unloading groceries from his car. It was a quiet Sunday, nothing unusual, nothing to suggest that the next few minutes would end with him in a hospital. A red Toyota Camry pulled up alongside him. There were a few words exchanged, brief, cold. Then the driver pulled away, but he came back. Moments later, as the man walked toward his home, the red Camry circled back around and the driver opened fire. The 42-year-old man was shot in the leg. Security camera footage captured it, the Camry speeding away, the whole thing over in seconds. A neighbor named Curtis Ellis lived nearby. He spoke about what he saw and what it meant. "My wife could have been out there taking groceries out of the car, just like this guy was taking water out his car. And it doesn't seem like he even knew the guy." That last part was the detail that mattered. It didn't seem like he even knew the guy. This was not a dispute. This was not retaliation. This was a man with a gun, a car, and no apparent reason. 10 minutes later, at 4:27 in the afternoon, Romeo Nance drove to the Pheasant Run Apartments in unincorporated Joliet Township. There, he encountered a 28-year-old man named Toyosi Bakare. Bakare was a Nigerian immigrant. He had come to the United States just 3 years earlier. Nance shot him in the head. Toyosi Bakare was taken to hospital. He was later pronounced dead. 2 shootings, 10 minutes apart. 2 men who had nothing to do with each other, nothing to do with the Nance family, nothing to do with whatever was happening inside Romeo Nance that afternoon. Police were now looking for a red Toyota Camry with Illinois plate number Q730412. They released Romeo Nance's name and photograph publicly. News stations across the Chicago area broadcast the alert. CBS 2 investigative reporter Dave Cini reported live. "Let's get right to the picture of the man police are looking for. He is Romeo Nance, and he is considered armed and dangerous, about 23 years old. If you see him, do not approach him. Immediately call police." Joliet police are familiar with Romeo Nance, who has a history with them. What police did not yet know, what no one yet knew, was that by the time that alert went out, the worst of it was already over. The 2 houses on West Acres Road were already silent. By Sunday night, Joliet police had connected the red Toyota Camry to both street shootings. They knew the car, they knew the plate, and through Romeo Nance's prior arrest records, they knew his home address, the 2200 block of West Acres Road. They set up surveillance on the street. Officers watched those 2 houses through the night. For 12 hours, they waited outside. They watched for movement. They watched for the Camry. They watched for any sign that Romeo Nance was still inside. There was nothing. No movement, no lights, no sign of life. What investigators did not yet know was that they were watching over a crime scene that had already happened, that behind those walls, 7 people were already dead. The Will County Sheriff's Office was also now involved. Multiple agencies were coordinating. The FBI Fugitive Task Force was engaged. Authorities were asking residents to call police if they spotted Nance, but to avoid approaching him under any circumstances. On the morning of Monday, January 22nd, at approximately noon, something changed. Deputies on surveillance noticed blood on a doorframe. They entered. Inside 2212 and 2225 West Acres Road, officers found what the police chief would later describe as the worst crime scene of his nearly 3-decade career. 7 people, all shot multiple times, all dead. Tamika Nance, 47 years old, the mother. William Esters II, 35 years old, the uncle. Christine Esters, 38 years old, the aunt, the corrections officer who had spent her career inside a facility built to hold violent people, and who could not have known that the most dangerous person she would ever encounter was someone she shared Christmas dinners with. Joshua Nance, 31 years old, Romeo's brother, bedridden, unable to run, unable to fight back. Alexandria Nance, 20 years old, a sister. Alana Nance, 16 years old, a sister. Angel Nance, 14 years old, the youngest, a child. All shot, all dead inside the homes where they had lived, where they had laughed, where Tamika had fought for her son just 12 months before. Police issued a formal statement. The suspect vehicle was known to be used by Joliet resident Romeo Nance, who has an extensive criminal history. And then came the next statement, the one that confirmed what investigators had started to fear. Shortly after, we were confident that the offender had fled the area and was no longer in Will County or the city of Joliet. Romeo Nance was gone. He had killed 10 people, 7 family members, 2 strangers in the street, and left a 10th victim wounded. And then he had simply driven away. The question now was where? By Monday evening, January 22, 2024, the manhunt had crossed state lines. Romeo Nance was not hiding in Joliet. He was not hiding in Illinois. He was 1,200 miles away, pushing south through the middle of the country in a red Toyota Camry, trying to disappear. Law enforcement believed he was heading for the Mexican border. Illinois police were now coordinating directly with federal agencies. The FBI Fugitive Task Force was fully activated. The U.S. Marshals Service was tracking him across state lines. Multiple agencies, multiple states, all focused on one man in one car. Then, at around 6 o'clock on Monday evening, there was a development. Illinois police confirmed to the U.S. Marshals that Romeo Nance was believed to be traveling in the state of Texas. At around 8 o'clock that same evening, a helicopter located the suspect vehicle on Interstate 35 in Texas. Law enforcement on the ground began mobilizing additional resources to stop him. Nance had made one critical mistake. Before leaving Illinois, he had swapped his license plates. He pulled into a shopping mall and stole a set of Texas plates, switching them onto his Camry to avoid detection. It bought him time, but it was not enough. A Joliet police spokesperson confirmed. His red Toyota Camry now bearing Texas license plates. Police believe Nance stole them at an area shopping mall. About 30 miles southwest of San Antonio, in a small town called Natalia, Texas, Romeo Nance pulled into a Valero gas station outside a travel center called Chubby's. He had nowhere left to go. U.S. Marshals moved in. The official account of what happened next was given directly by law enforcement. Task force officers with the United States Marshals Service observed Mr. Nance armed with a firearm fleeing from the vehicle. It's at that time they gave chase to him. He rounded a corner around the gas station and decided to take his life. Romeo Nance shot himself. He was 23 years old. Inside his red Toyota Camry, officers recovered a Bushmaster XM15 rifle and a Springfield Armory pistol, in addition to the 9mm handgun he had used on himself. He had been armed the entire time, armed and running. The Joliet police chief addressed the public shortly after. Mr. Nance's reign of terror in our communities in Will County is now over. It was over, but the questions were only beginning. Quick pause. If you're following along, drop a comment below. We want to hear your thoughts. And hit subscribe if you haven't yet. As investigators worked backwards through the timeline, a picture began to emerge that was more complicated than one man and one day of violence. Romeo Nance had not acted entirely alone. The first person to come under scrutiny was his girlfriend, Kylie Cleveland Singleton, 21 years old, mother of his 3-year-old child. The same woman who had helped Tamika Nance scrape together the $10,000 bond payment 1 year earlier to bring Romeo home. While the manhunt was underway, while 7 family members lay dead inside those 2 houses, and police were broadcasting Romeo's face on every news channel in the Chicago area, Kylie Cleveland Singleton was at a sports bar. CBS 2 reported the detail directly. CBS 2 has learned through sources that on Sunday night after the rampage took place, Cleveland was at a local sports bar hanging out with friends. According to the source, the 21-year-old appeared to be pacing back and forth while at the Double J sports bar at around 9 o'clock. She was not calm. She was pacing. She knew something. Police alleged that Cleveland Singleton had withheld Romeo's location and his phone number while the bodies were still undiscovered. She was actively contacted during the manhunt, and she said nothing that would help police find him. She was charged with obstruction of justice. A Joliet police spokesperson stated, "Joliet police say 21-year-old Kylie Cleveland Singleton made statements in an attempt to stop police from arresting her boyfriend, Romeo Nance." Cleveland Singleton appeared before a judge and was released on home confinement, electronically monitored, ordered not to leave her residence. She was the mother of a 3-year-old child. She had known Romeo Nance intimately, and according to investigators, she had chosen to protect him, even as the people he had killed lay waiting to be found. But she was not the only one. In May 2024, 4 months after the massacre, a 24-year-old man named John W. Hansen was arrested. According to investigators, Hansen had been inside that red Toyota Camry with Romeo Nance during the Sunday afternoon street shootings. He was there when Toyosi Bakare was shot in the head on the street outside the Pheasant Run apartments. He was there when the 42-year-old man was shot while unloading his groceries. And after the shooting, police alleged, Hansen helped dispose of the murder weapon, dumping it into the DuPage River. Hansen was charged with 3 counts of murder. Now go back to the beginning of this story. Go back to 4:15 on Sunday afternoon. Go back to that red Toyota Camry pulling up alongside a man unloading groceries. Go back to those few cold words exchanged before the car pulled away. There may have been 2 people in that car. 2 people who watched a man walk toward his front door. 2 people who circled back. 2 people who made that choice together. That detail changes something. It does not change what Romeo Nance did, but it changes the picture of how he did it and who was willing to be part of it. In the days and weeks after the massacre, Joliet tried to make sense of something that had no clean explanation. There was no manifesto. There were no final arguments that neighbors overheard. There were no domestic disturbance calls on record at those 2 houses on West Acres Road. Nothing in the public record pointed to a single moment where someone could have intervened. Police said it plainly. We can't get inside his head. We just don't have any clue as to why he did what he did. And then a second official added, many cases like this, we may never know the truth or the motives behind these senseless killings. The motive, the single most important question in this entire case, remains unanswered. What investigators could piece together was a timeline. Romeo had killed his family first. Then he drove to Davis Street and shot a stranger unloading groceries. Then he drove to the Pheasant Run apartments and shot Toyosi Bakare in the head. Then he got on the road and drove south. The family was killed before the street shootings, which means at some point on Sunday afternoon before 4:15 p.m., Romeo Nance walked through those 2 houses on West Acres Road and shot his mother, his uncle, his aunt, his bedridden brother, his 3 sisters, and then got in his car and kept going. The community's response was immediate and overwhelming. A balloon release was organized in Tamika's honor. A large crowd gathered outside the homes on West Acres Road to pray and remember the victims. A surviving relative spoke to reporters at the gathering. Her words were quiet but absolute. They were loved by so many people. They were loving people, a loving, loving family. Kara Esters, one of the last surviving members of the extended family, spoke about who they were and what they meant to the people around them. Love and laughter. My family was all about and is and will forever be about love and laughter. She talked about Christmas, about how that house on West Acres Road was where the family gathered every year, about the traditions that were now gone. And she talked about going forward. We'll pick up these pieces and we will forever remember their names and shout them from the rooftops. Somewhere in that same crowd, there were people grieving people they had never met. The family of Toyosi Bakare, a 28-year-old man who had come to the United States 3 years earlier, who had built a life, who had no connection to the Nance family whatsoever, was also living in the wreckage of January 21st. The 42-year-old man shot on Davis Street survived his wound, but he had been outside his own home, doing something as ordinary as bringing in groceries, when a car pulled up and a man with a gun decided he would be next. His neighbor, Curtis Ellis, said what many people were thinking. My wife could have been out there taking groceries out of the car just like this guy was taking water out his car, and it doesn't seem like he even knew the guy. That randomness, that total absence of reason, was part of what made this so hard for a community to absorb. You could not have avoided it. You could not have seen it coming. You could not have done anything differently. Romeo Nance drove past you, and that was enough. At one community gathering, a member of the crowd spoke about what they were left with. I don't understand this. I don't understand why it happened. But one thing that I do know is that God is still with me. He's still in control. That was where Joliet was. Not with answers, not with closure, just with grief and faith and the names of 8 people who should still have been alive. There was no trial. There was no courtroom. No verdict read aloud. No moment where Romeo Nance sat across from the people whose lives he had destroyed and heard a judge tell him what he had done. He made sure of that. When U.S. Marshals closed in on that Valero gas station in Natalia, Texas, Romeo Nance did not surrender. He did not put his hands up. He rounded the corner of the building, away from the officers, and he shot himself. He was 23 years old. The accountability that Tamika had fought to delay, the consequences she had spent $10,000 to push back, never came in any formal sense. The courts never got their turn. The victims never got a verdict. What they got instead was a press conference. A police chief standing at a podium, exhausted, telling a grieving city that the man responsible was dead. Mr. Nance's reign of terror in our communities in Will County is now over. That was the closest thing to a reckoning this case would ever produce. For Kylie Cleveland Singleton, there was a legal process. She appeared before a judge, was charged with 1 count of obstruction of justice, and was released on home confinement with electronic monitoring. She was ordered not to leave her residence. The woman who had withheld Romeo's location while 7 bodies waited to be discovered was being monitored by an ankle bracelet in her home. For John Hansen, the process was still unfolding. Arrested in May 2024, 4 months after the massacre, he faced 3 counts of murder for his alleged role in the street shootings and for helping dispose of the weapon in the DuPage River. His case was working its way through the courts, but for the 8 people who died, for Tamika, for Christine, for William, for Joshua, for Alexandria, for Alana, for Angel, for Toyosi Bakare, there was no reckoning that matched the scale of what was taken from them. There was only the silence of 2 houses on West Acres Road, and the people left behind trying to figure out how to keep going. The houses on West Acres Road still stand. As of the time this episode was made, 2,212 and 2,225 West Acres Road remain on that block in Joliet, Illinois, 1 block from Ascension Street. Joseph Hospital. There are memorials outside, flowers, objects left by people who came to pay their respects to a family they never knew. Kara Esters, one of the last surviving members of the extended family, gave an interview in the days following the massacre. She was asked how she wanted her family to be remembered. She did not hesitate. Love and laughter. My family was all about, and is, and will forever be, about love and laughter. She described what it felt like to look at that house, the place where they had celebrated Christmas, where they had shown up for each other in the middle of the night, where they had given everything they had to the people around them. And she said this, "We'll pick up these pieces and we will forever remember their names and shout them from the rooftops." The surviving family, by her own description, was small. What Romeo Nance did on January 21st, 2024, did not just kill 8 people. It nearly erased an entire family from existence. The motive has never been established. No note was found. No final message. No explanation from anyone who spoke to Romeo in the hours before the killings. Investigators stated publicly that they had no clue why he did what he did. That remains true today. John Hansen's case continued through the legal system. Kylie Cleveland Singleton remained on home confinement pending the resolution of her obstruction charge. The legal threads of this case were still being pulled as of the making of this episode. Toyosi Bakare, 28 years old, 3 years in a new country, a life being built, has no resolution either. His family lost him to a man he had never met, for a reason that has never been explained, on a Sunday afternoon when he simply happened to be in the wrong place. The 42-year-old man shot on Davis Street survived. He went home. He lived. But Curtis Ellis, his neighbor, said something that has stayed with this case from the beginning. "My wife could have been out there taking groceries out of the car, just like this guy was taking water out his car." That is the quiet fact this story ends on. Not the gun, not the car, Not the criminal history or the bond hearing or the red Toyota Camry switching license plates at a Texas shopping mall. The quiet fact is this. On January 21st, 2024, in Joliet, Illinois, the most dangerous place you could be was near someone who loved Romeo Nance. His family paid for that love with their lives. A stranger paid for the misfortune of standing outside his own home. Another stranger paid for walking out of his apartment building at the wrong moment. And a mother who refused to stop believing in her son paid first. Tamika Nance, 47 years old, registered nurse, the woman who held that family together. She was the first one he shot. If this case stayed with you, if you felt the weight of those names, then you already understand why this work matters. These were not headline people. The story of what happened on West Acres Road did not get the national attention it deserved. 8 people were killed in a single day, 7 of them in the same family. And within a week, the news cycle had moved on. That is exactly why this channel exists. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, if you think Tamika and Joshua and Angel and Alana and Alexandria and Christine and William and Toyosi deserve more than a 3-day news cycle, then subscribe. Not later, now. Every week we come back to cases like this one. Cases that slipped through the cracks. Cases where the victims are still waiting for someone to say their names out loud. Hit the notification bell. Share this episode. Put it on your page. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what do you think really happened inside those 2 houses on January 21st? What do you think pushed Romeo Nance to this point? Because I don't have that answer, and I think about it.